Minutes after the Frost programme, number 10 hit the phones.
Pager goes off, number 10 on the line.
Around midday that day, the phone started to ring, and it virtually didn't stop ringing until about 9 o'clock at night.
Part of the issue here, of course, was that there was then this big faffing about to actually discover precisely what words Tony had used on Breaks with the Frost.
At the end of that 5 years, we will be in a position where our health service spending comes up to the average of the European Union.
And then this rather kind of Delphic construction as to what this actually meant had to be turned into something that was coherent and tangible.
The problem was, it was a Sunday, and most of the facts and figures were shut up in offices in Whitehall.
Luckily, my elder daughter's boyfriend had a quite sophisticated in those days, a little calculator that had a compound interest function on it. I had the OECD data on the computer, and together we ran all sorts of different calculations to check out that it did add up.
It was at this point that Blair's advisors discovered he had not told his own Chancellor about the biggest spending announcement they'd ever make.
There clearly, as we know, had been no consultation with the Treasury about this as a commitment, though the Treasury had been happy to provide the figures as an illustration, because in the conference call there was a reference to is GB on side, or words to that effect. And the answer was, to words to the effect, that he would have to be because the Prime Minister had spoken.
I think it was courageous because, as you now know, not every I was dotted and not every T was crossed, and it needed that calculator to work out some of the fine detail. That is quite a thing to do.
Gordon Brown had also wanted to increase health spending, but he wanted to do it prudently. Now, Blair had to face his stern Chancellor to explain himself.
Did you tell him what you were going to say on the Frost programme beforehand?
We'd had discussions going back some weeks about this, and I can't remember the exact ins and outs, but there were discussions about forms of words that would be used. It's fair to say probably would have preferred me not to have said it in that way, but I was very sure that we had to send that signal out very clearly. And to be fair, once that was done, if it hadn't been for the Treasury providing the cash, it wouldn't have happened.
You bounced him.
No, I don't think bounce. I didn't bounce. I mean, this has been a debate going on for a long time, but you were going to come to this point at any event.
The settled view about this is that the Chancellor told you that he thought you had stolen his effing budget. Is that true?
No, he didn't say that. What he did say was, this is a big commitment and it's going to be a real sweat to meet it. And he did meet it. And that's really all I need to say and kind of want.
So the spirit was really, it's going to be a sweat to do it, so thank you.
There is commentary that other people can make, but not me.
Gordon Brown was invited to take part in this series, but didn't accept. By 2000, 3 years into government, Blair and Brown's personal friendship seemed well and truly over. A number 10 source revealed that when Gordon Brown got married, he decided only to tell Tony Blair the day before. And as time went on, policy insiders saw deeper and deeper differences emerge between Brown and Blair.
They had different agendas. They had different priorities. The Chancellor, reasonably and rightly, was above all focused on an agenda for the poor. The Prime Minister, above all, was focused on an agenda for the whole of the country. He wanted to make the public sector more effective for everyone. He had different ideas about how to prioritise public spending. and they clashed.
There were two centres of power. Number 10 and number 11 were both there. They were working sometimes in parallel, sometimes against each other. When they worked together, they were a very powerful force for change. It was often frustrating in particular departments because we had a set of mandates from number 10 about what they wanted us to do in relation to our own performance, and a set of mandates from number 11 about what they wanted us to do in terms of our performance, and that was frustrating and time-consuming and inefficient for government.
I think that constructive conflict can lead to the most enormous, powerful change, and that happened on many occasions between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. The destructive element often weakened both of them and destabilised the government.
Tony Blair's staff also experienced tensions with Gordon Brown's Treasury team. They say reaching agreement on the right policies, though it happened in the end, was tortuously difficult.
I mean, the Treasury likes to control and actually doesn't like to hand things over very much, and is nervous about change.
Oh, there were plenty of times that you'd go to meetings and Treasury officials would treat you with the utter disdain. You know, it would be a sort of combination of believing you to be unspeakably right-wing and unspeakably stupid.
At times it drove you mad that the Treasury were arguing over elements of this, that and the other policy.
Bitter divisions between Blair and Brown surfaced over how to reform health and education. Both men wanted to do it their way. Before he took power, Tony Blair had always derided the Tory policy of using markets to make public services work better.
First of all, we'll get rid of that conservative internal market that's caused so much damage in the National Health Service. We've had enough of running it like a supermarket. It's not a supermarket, it's a public service.
But after a few years in power, Blair's stance changed profoundly. He now became convinced that hospitals and schools needed market incentives to improve.
A quasi-market situation where you can test the service or the consumers get greater choice. Inject this greater sense of dynamism, contestability, competition was basically breaking down the monolith of the old public services. If people think they're going to get their paycheck and they're going to keep their position irrespective of how good a service they deliver, irrespective of whether they adjust to change or not, well, you know, human nature being what it is, they sit back.
Blair's thinking was moving rapidly away from the instincts of a large number of Labour MPs.
I wanted the Labour Party to be a political party for people that wanted to do well and be successful, as well as people who cared about society. And education is just tremendously important about that, both wanting a good education for yourself, but also wanting the best for your children. You know, I remember an occasion when a member of my staff came to see me and said, well, I've got something to tell you, and, you know, I think you'll find this very difficult. And, you know, I understand if you find it difficult for me to carry on working for you. And I was thinking, what's going on? Some terrible scandal. Yeah. And they said, I'm going to send my son to a private school. I said, yes. And I was kind of, they expect me to say, well, in that case, my goodness me, you are next to a criminal, you must leave my employment. I mean, it's... Now, obviously, my task is to try and make sure the state education system is so good that people want their children to go there. But, you know, there's something in this concept of aspiration that for me was so important. And so if you take it a step back from private school, for me, there could never be anything wrong with someone saying, look, I'm not prepared to send my child to this state school. I want to send them to a different one because it's better. It's going to provide a better education for my child.
Market reforms were bound to alienate many in the Labour Party. But was Gordon Brown on board? For more than a year, Brown was, in public, guarded on the issue.
Well, we used to watch Gordon Brown, and it's a little like watching the Sphinx, really. You're never quite sure what's going on there. Brown was good at staying out of the way. He was very skillful as Chancellor, just keeping quiet when he wasn't happy with something.
Eventually, Brown did speak out. Brown said markets should have a role in public services, but, unlike Blair, he chose to emphasise the limits and failures of markets.
Our clear and robust defence of markets must be combined with a clear and robust recognition of their limits. In health, not only is the consumer not sovereign, but a free market in healthcare will not produce the most efficient price for its services. So the many market failures in health, if taken individually, challenge the adequacy of markets to provide efficient market solutions.
Both Gordon and Tony had their own reform histories, their own commitments to reform, but they believed in reform in very, very different ways. Gordon's view, which I think is again very respectable, was a view that you could create a different law, different set of arrangements, different set of funding regimes to bring about and promote change throughout the country. And that was a very traditional Labour way of looking at things. Tony's view was rather more anarchic in character, and I used to characterise it as social entrepreneurship. He would say, give people, whether people running schools or hospitals or whoever, the ability to go out and drive and make change themselves, and that would be a more effective route to change.
The centrepiece of Blair's NHS reforms were new foundation hospitals, modern organisations which would be free from central government control so they could make their own decisions about their finances and management.
Tony spent a lot of time engaging Gordon on the question of foundation hospitals, but there were quite substantial disagreements.
I don't know what was in Gordon's mind at the time, but obviously there were concerns. What is unreasonable is for legitimate concerns to tip into ideological concerns. Now, I like to think that that is not what was motivating people.
In late September 2002, Gordon Brown presented cabinet members with a 50-page memo setting out a host of objections he had to the proposed financial regime for foundation hospitals.
There was circulated a 50-page memo about the problems about foundation hospitals to the cabinet, which wasn't written by you, and it wasn't written by the health secretary.
Yeah. It's not an emerging theme here, is there? There was an issue to do with borrowing powers and so on, but yeah, but I mean, you can always say why something's a bad idea. That's the point. You know, it's... And there's nothing you can do to, as I say, to prove that it isn't.
A week later, on the 7th of October 2002, a showdown meeting took place at number 10 Downing Street.
There was Alan and Gordon there. I think John Prescott was there as well. And that was obviously to try and work out how we found a way through the concerns the Treasury had on the one side and, you know, Alan's desire to make this a radical model.
And my feeling all the way through this was that actually the whole thing sat together and I didn't want it watered down at all. However, the concerns were such from the Treasury that Tony felt that a compromise was needed. And I remember he said, well, if you do that, then the integrity of the policy is lost. And what we really want to achieve is not 100% what we're going to achieve. I know, but we're going to have to reach a compromise. And I said, fine, you're the boss. Yeah, if that's what you think is necessary. And he said, you know why? We've got to get this settled. It can't go on. It's running out of control. It's all over the media, dominating the party conference, etc. Let us just get it settled.
Blair reluctantly agreed to curb the freedom from Treasury control that he had wanted for foundation hospitals.
I tell you, within a matter of, I can't remember whether it was weeks or months, but I was having